Welcome to the Orthocast. Today, our guest is John. He is a cradle Orthodox. He was raised in the Greek Orthodox Church in America. He's had a few different social media pages. One was called John Shares the Bible, making it accessible to the average person through Instagram. So I've been looking to share more cradle Orthodox stories because I think it's really important. Is like, why do people stay in the faith? And it's really important that people make their faith their own. So, John, my first question for you is, what was your upbringing like? Were your parents like really into the faith? Did you just get baptized and not go to church that much, or what was it like?
Well, my mom, I'm Greek,
Hmm.
and my mom's side is Greek. So going to my dad converted,
Hmm.
not the other way around. I think
Yeah.
he was Protestant or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was raised. I have an older sister. We were both raised in the church every Sunday, infant baptized, Greek school or yeah, Greek school, Sunday school, and then when I was old enough, I served in the altar
Wow.
from like 11 to 18 years old. We were very active in the church, youth group, and since it was a Greek church, we have like the Glendy, the festival every year, so Greek dance. So very active. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. And so, did you just feel like it was a cultural thing? Like, did it feel like this was only for Greeks, or did you ever go to like maybe in an evangelical church, or what did you think of other things besides the Orthodox Church growing up?
To be honest, I'd never been to any other church,
Really?
and yeah, there's definitely a strong like I'd say cultural significance of being, Greek or at least Eastern European.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because the services are mostly in Greek,
Hmm.
and we have like the Greek food, the Greek glendy, Greek dance, Greek school,
Yeah.
but it never seemed to be, um, like exclusive. Like, oh, if you were like an American or something else, like you couldn't like you weren't welcome
Yeah.
here. Um, and in fact, the in my lifetime, we've changed priests at the church. I think three times,
Hmm.
just like naturally, like they
Yeah.
died, like
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
And now, like every Sunday at every liturgy, at the end of the service, the priest asks the congregation, like, "Are there any visitors?" And
Yeah.
like he welcomes them. So while there is like a definite like there is a significance to like being Greek, it's definitely not like you have to be Greek or
Yeah.
something like.
Hmm. And then in your personal faith journey, growing up, in elementary school, middle school, high school, did it just feel like something your parents were doing, and you have good like experiences in the church, or what was that like? What did you think of Christianity and God?
I was probably a lot more innocent when I was in like elementary school. I may have had a personal relationship with Christ at that point, but
Mm.
definitely as I got older, I wasn't living the right way. And if you want, I can definitely go much deeper into that. But
Yeah.
um, like I learned or I felt when I was little, some things happened where I realized like nobody's gonna look out for me. Like if someone's gonna protect me, it's gonna have to be me. And
Yeah.
so I like with that mentality, I grew up like I have ADHD, so I was always getting in trouble in elementary school, like just being rambunctious, mischievous. But
Yeah.
then as I got older, it turned more into like me just being like a bad guy. Like I
Wow.
sold drugs, like we would like rob people, like
Oh my.
guns, all
Wow.
stuff. There was like gang activity. And at the same time, I would always at night say every single night say my prayers. And even
Wow.
though I wasn't doing anything right, I would always like every single night like I had to say my prayers. And during this time, we were still going to church every single Sunday. I was still serving in the altar.
Wow.
And so I never had, or at least I never felt like I had this personal relationship with Christ where I like loved him on a personal level,
Hmm.
but I always had a great love for the tradition of the church. Like it was just like cool to me,
Yeah.
like this masculine thing of like
Yeah.
and so that like always kept me close. Like I never I don't know if I was ever close enough to consider having a fall away from Christ, but I was always, I feel like, holding on just like by a thread to
Wow.
with Christ and the church. And as I got older, like out of high school, I kind of cleaned stuff up, and I'm 24 now, and I'm just now really coming to the church
Yeah.
and to Christ, honestly.
Wow. And so, did you ever go to Greece or anything, like, and see like beautiful churches, go to Mount Athos or anything like that?
Yeah, when I was summer going into freshman year, I think my sister had just graduated high school, so as a present, her godfather, which is also like my mom's cousin,
Hmm.
took us, me, my mom, and my sister to Greece, and we didn't go to Mount Athos, but we went to Meteora. We
Hmm.
saw the Virgin Mary's house in Turkey. We I don't remember. I mean, we saw some monasteries, but like public like Greek Orthodox churches, I don't think we saw any of those.
Yeah.
But we saw the head of Saint John the Baptist.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And so, were you taking your faith seriously when you saw those? Like, did you still think, oh, this is pretty cool, even though, you like, I'm still a little bit disconnected from God.
At this point it was like kind of just before I started being like really bad, but
Yeah.
I didn't have like, to be honest, like, and I'm upset at myself. If I would have had more of like a determination in my faith, I know I'd remember seeing the head of St. John the Baptist, but like I just don't have it in my memory for whatever reason. Like
Yeah.
I remember the monasteries, and I remember like all these things. And my mom, we were talking about it the other day. She's like, "Oh, remember we saw the head of St. John the Baptist?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? No, no, we didn't." And she's like, "Yeah, we did." And
Wow.
I know if I would have been more into it, like that's something that I would remember, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't.
Yeah. And so it sounds like after high school, something happened. What was the catalyst for like, hey, I need to like fix things. I don't like the path I'm going down. Cause it is hard, like when we start hanging around the wrong group of friends, we can dig ourselves in a deeper and deeper hole, and that those problems start to compound, and it gets really hard to get out of those habits. So how, like, what made you want to do that, and how did you do that?
Yeah. So thankfully, God had always blessed me with really great friends.
Yeah.
Like the people closest to me were good kids, and then on outside of that, it was
Mm,
a lot of negative
that's really
influence.
good.
And so I met my one best friend when I was in sixth grade, and we're still like best friends today. And so he always stayed with me. And when I got into high school and I was doing all these things, in my head, I always kind of planned on stopping once I graduated, because I knew like
Wow.
once you turn 18, like you can't play around with this anymore. Like you'll go to prison for real.
Yeah.
And so senior year, I met my other best friend, and she kind of like through her, like I kind of like softened up, and like because she was a good kid, and so
Hmm.
I never was close to a girl before, and she like I feel like not necessarily in a Christian way, but guided me like, hey, like this stuff isn't cool. Like it's not good to like
Yeah.
hurt people and sell drugs and like all this stuff. And without like even like that Christian thing, like that undertone of like a Christian influence, like I still feel that God like put these people in my life
Yeah.
like with a purpose to like slowly pull me out.
Definitely.
After I graduated, I got really, really bad anxiety
Hmm.
to the point where, and I always kind of had it, but it got really bad after high school. My dad died
Oh.
the summer right after graduation,
Yeah.
and I like couldn't leave the house. Like I was like, if I was gonna leave the house, like I was gonna shake and I was gonna throw up, and it was gonna be like a big deal just to like go to the store.
Wow.
And so for like probably 4-ish years, like I was like kind of locked up in my house.
Wow.
And over that course of time, very, very slowly, like one thing would happen and then another thing would happen. For example, like my mom one Christmas got me an Orthodox prayer book.
Hmm.
And I started very like slowly looking into like some of these prayers, the Trisagion prayer.
Yeah.
And then like months later, like I'd be on TikTok and I saw like a live stream of a preacher, not Orthodox, but a
Hmm.
preacher. And so before bed, I'd start watching a short sermon, and then I'd always be saying my prayers. And so over the course of like years, I
Wow.
just kept adding like one thing after another, and eventually I got to this point where I was like, hey, like I'm like Christian at this point because I
Yeah.
stopped doing bad things at the same time.
Wow.
And when I kind of realized that, I started taking it Christianity, not necessarily Orthodox, but a lot Orthodoxy, a lot more
Hmm.
serious. And I tried to, really start cleaning things up, like my language, like
Yeah.
my like addictions to things, like just like my general demeanor, like trying to love and forgive. But it was definitely, a over the course of 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah. And this was during COVID too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like that anxiety too, and kind of being restricted from going to church because, some churches closed. And so basically, you were able to make your faith your own through this kind of like hardship. And slowly, the like little seeds started to like, they started to blossom with like the prayer book and maybe, even reaching you on TikTok. And then did it feel like everything just clicked or at a moment, or was it just kind of like over time, just slowly like you're like, wait, I believe this. Like
Uh,
before you were just kind of going through the motions as a kid, but then now it's like, wait, I'm coming to this like on my own. And
yeah, I don't know if there was ever like this crazy moment,
mm-hmm.
but more of a gradual thing. I know I used to watch a ton, like, I only started getting into like Orthodox specifically, like maybe a month and a half or 2 months ago.
Wow.
So for the last like year and a half before that, I was just like kind of accepting every Christian message that was
Mm.
like being shown to me. So
Yeah.
like a lot, there was, I'll admit, like a lot of heresy that I didn't, realize was
Yeah.
heresy. But like I'd watch a ton of Billy Graham sermons.
Mm.
And one day, it was October 17th, 22. I At the end of the sermons, they're like, "Oh, call this number and like make your commitment to Christ." And I'd see it at the end of every single video,
Yeah.
and I try to like talk myself out of it, like, "Nah, no, like that. This sermon's from like 50 years ago. That number definitely doesn't work
Yeah.
anymore. It's
Yeah.
disconnected." But I called it up, and I said the prayer with the lady, and then on that day, it's like, okay, like now I'm like a Christian, like for real.
Wow.
And so then at that point, I kept watching a lot of stuff, and I won't name any names, but
Yeah.
I watched a lot of stuff where they it's I don't know at what point it's no longer Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but they would say things like they would be like, "Oh, the Holy Trinity is not a thing, like it's made up."
Wow.
They'd say like things that are very like, but still like they're reading the Bible and like, oh, this is not that the Bible's made up, but like these theological concepts are like not
Wow.
true, they're made up. And I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, icons are bad, like praying or like asking like saints to intercede for you, that's like demonic and like all these things.
Oh my
And so
god.
I started to be like, wait, at my church we do this stuff. Like what's going
Wow.
on? Like is my church like so far off?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then like over time I learned, like I started to actually like care enough to like go find an answer for
Yeah.
these things. And over time, like I understood the concepts. And I'm by no means a theologian, but
Yeah.
I started to get a much more basic understanding of like why icons are good and why we can ask the saints to intercede for us and why
Yeah.
the Holy Trinity exists.
Yeah.
And so that was very helpful. Unfortunately, um I was kind of like the lone Christian in the friend group, so I never had like a guide. I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like figuring everything out for myself.
Yeah.
But with all that, I mean, still like now I do have guys. Now I'm a lot closer with the priest at my church. I have like people I can talk to, so I'm here
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's really good. I think that's really essential is to have like a good solid friend group and also a good solid Christian community, like people around your age that you can like hang out with and pray. And so that's really interesting that you kind of were listening to like general Christianity, Billy Graham stuff, and then getting off into some other like people probably on like YouTube or something where they're starting to teach like weird things, and you're like, wait, I thought we were all Christian, and then like looking deeper and seeing that like
Yep.
Orthodoxy, they're condemning a lot of these practices when these practices were practiced from the very beginning. So what helped you the most, like finding kind of answers on the Orthodox side? Was it like YouTube or website or a book? Or
Definitely YouTube.
yeah,
I'm not, unfortunately, I'm not a huge reader. I read the
yeah,
Bible,
hmm,
but beyond that, I'm trying to like force myself to start reading more.
yeah,
So I do have some books that I do plan on reading, but I
mm,
haven't yet. But definitely YouTube,
yeah,
like honestly, like your channel,
awesome,
Father Spiridon,
yeah,
Living Orthodox, Patristic Nectar, and it was really cool for me when I was watching these people, and then the priest at my church was like, "Hey, you should watch these people," and I already was, and it was kind of like that
yeah, that's really
second like
cool.
thing of like validation for these people, like okay, like these really are like the guys to listen to.
Yeah,
But yeah, definitely YouTube.
yeah.
Uh,
That's really cool. That's what I really like about Orthodoxy is it feels like a big family in America where people like know each other, and your priest may like recommend a channel that you're already watching. It's all very interconnected, and it's really good. And so, how was it, going back to church, but then going back to like confession? Because that's a big thing. Is like racked up some kind of like baggage, but then like going to confession, it is hard to repent for all of us, but especially, yeah. So how was that?
yeah, I actually I'd been to confession twice before. I went on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But the first time I was in like second grade, and I had, you know, my mom made me go because I got into like some trouble at school. But
Yeah.
not nothing like it was like I was like 7, so I didn't like understand like the sincerity of what confession's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then freshman year, I got expelled from school,
Wow.
and the church people at the church like found out about it. And I wasn't forced to go to confession, but it was like strongly recommended.
Yeah.
And even then, like I still didn't understand the gravity of confession, so I kind of showed up, confessed that I got expelled from school, and then like that was it.
Yeah.
And so now on Wednesday, I had known I had this appointment for confession for like a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and so my mind was constantly like recalling all my. And I was
Yeah.
like, how am I gonna look at my priest and tell him all this stuff?
Yeah.
And I get down, and the way he does it is we sit right next to each other,
Yeah.
and what was supposed to be a 30-minute appointment went I think over an hour
Wow.
of me just recalling, and then I did this, and then I did this, and it was like horrible, horrible, horrible
Yeah.
stuff. Like, and even sins that I committed at church in the altar, those were really,
Yeah.
really hard. And but at the end of it, there was one point that was really powerful to me that really sticks out to me, because while confession is like a loving thing, and the priest is going to like reassure you and tell you like like, not that what you did is okay, but it can be okay.
Yeah.
He turned to me and he looked at me, and he said, you need to stop doing that. That will destroy you.
Yeah.
And like that like was just like this really like powerful thing to me, and it's like I knew that, and like I've been doing better with this thing, but for the priest to turn to me, look me in the eyes, and say, you need to stop that, it will destroy you, was just like
Yeah.
this amazing thing. And then afterwards, of course, like we say the prayer of absolution, he
Hmm.
puts his garment over my head, and then he gives me a hug. And so like that balance of like sternness and like love and compassion was really good to me, because I didn't really want to go in there and him tell me, "Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay."
Yeah.
Not that he would, but like in my head I kind of thought that maybe, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like that at all. And I appreciate that. And that's one of the things about the Orthodox Church that I do really appreciate is that they don't make it the easiest thing in the world. Like these not like non-denominational or whatever. It's like, oh, it's okay, like do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But like no, the Orthodox Church, like there's rules and like you have to like follow the rules.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and the rules aren't arbitrary. They're for your betterment. Like the
Right.
priest shouldn't just say, "Oh yeah, that's it's fine." It's like no, they should kind of give you a good uneasiness about these sins because all these sins can ultimately lead us to hell. So it's like that's what true love is like yes, you are forgiven. That's the beauty of confession and repentance and hating your past sins is that they aren't your sins anymore. But we do fall into the same sins, and so having a priest, a good spiritual father who will be stern with you, maybe just make you think before like you're gonna sin again. You
Yeah,
like
like
that
that's
that's
been
gonna stick with you.
because I'm in my head. It's like, well, if you do this like next confession, you're gonna have to say this,
Yeah,
and like that on its own has been like a good deterrent already since just 2 days ago.
yeah, exactly. It keeps us accountable. Is like we're we know we're accountable to God, but we're also accountable to the priest. If we're just continually confessing the same sin, um, they're like we're gonna have to go and confess it to another person, which it's uncomfortable, and they'll confront us on it. So that's why I think confession is so great.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so, speaking of that, I think both you and I and a lot of young men struggle with a lot of temptations in the modern world, especially I think vaping, drugs, porn is just rampant everywhere.
yeah,
And getting off these things has just been so amazing for me, and I think anyone watching, if like getting off these things, like they will. I mean, these things are killing you slowly. They're destroying your soul, and so taking that next step is like, yes, I'm addicted to porn, and actually taking the steps to stop it, because ultimately it's like, how bad do you want to stop? Is
yeah,
that's what I realize is I have the power to stop. If I just never wanted to watch it again, I could never watch it. I could just not do it. And so, how was your experience with those kind of two vices that a lot of young men face?
yeah. In terms of being addicted, I have a very addictive personality,
Yeah.
and so I was never on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to a point where I could have gone that way.
Yeah.
I was using a lot of drugs, but one thing I was addicted to, I was vaping.
Yeah.
And I started out smoking like tobacco and then
Yeah.
like and it eventually led to vaping.
Yeah.
And for that, that one was tough. That addiction I find it, at least for me, was like it's kind of like all in your head. Like
Yeah.
if you once you stop, like yeah, you'll want it sometimes, but it's like really all in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. Like I felt like God just wanted me to let go of that, and so I did that one fairly easily. I haven't vaped or done nicotine since June of
Yeah.
year.
That's really good because nicotine is hard. It's hard for a lot of people to break.
Yeah,
And I actually had the opposite experience where I first got into vaping, like one with no nicotine. Then my friends had vape with nicotine, and then eventually they're smoking like cigarettes and stuff. So it's kind of weird because like they say vape is like to help you get off of it, but it can
yeah,
very easily just your throat gets used to the nicotine,
yeah,
and it's so bad because it like steals your happiness away, and you like need to have it all the time. And the only way I was able to stop is, it's really prevalent in high schools.
oh
Everyone had
yeah,
had the jewels and those like pens, and
yeah,
so I actually got like caught by my favorite teacher, and I just felt so bad. So I just sold it and got rid of it, and it was painful for a few weeks, but ultimately the pain of being addicted to nicotine would be a million times worse. So I'm so glad that I got off that. And also, nicotine really messes with your brain. So for you, it was easy to just go cold turkey too.
well,
Uh,
I mean, yeah, but getting to that point,
Yeah.
to quit was hard.
Yeah.
Um, because for years I've been thinking like, yeah, maybe I should quit. Maybe I should
Yeah.
quit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like one more, one. Let me get one more bit.
Yeah.
And so like to actually get to the point to quitting was very hard.
Yeah.
But then once I did it, that I never like relapsed on it or anything.
Yeah.
And to the point, like going back to like my friends, how great my friends have been. Like they knew I was quitting, and so I would like I would ask them to hit theirs, just kind of like to see, and
Mm.
they would be like, no, like get like no, like you're
Wow.
not hitting anything, like no. And so I was very thankful about that. But then came like porn,
Yeah.
and I had been on that since fifth grade. I was either 10 or 11,
Yeah.
and I'm 24 now, and for the last, dude, we'd be all not all day, but like multiple times a day, like every day
Yeah.
for more than a decade. And it like you start so young that like you're not even like mature enough to understand like the morality of what you're
Exactly.
doing. Like you don't even get that what you're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Like it's like 5 years before you even get to that point.
Hmm.
And I wanted, coming to Christ, this was something I wanted to do. And so since like November of 22, so for like a year and like however many months that is, I was trying to quit.
Yeah.
And I tried like different strategies and like stuff like that, and like none of it worked. And so I would pray about, like I would pray
Yeah.
about it. And over the course of that year and however many months, I learned like little things.
Mm.
And the biggest one for me is you can't like I can't go and like look at things that aren't porn, but that they are like,
Exactly. That's that's what I learned too, because I was addicted from, I think, sixth grade till 2020 or 2021. I mean, which is just this such a crucial part of your life, and it really messes with your brain. It really messes with your motivation, of like actually going out and like dating a girl, and it also it warps your view of how relationships should be, because you see this like pornography is like this hyper weird sexual
yeah, yeah,
dynamics, and so it, even if you're watching it and you know this isn't how it's going to be, it just influences your brain subconsciously. It just totally warps your brain, and it gets you into like weirder and weirder stuff, because like
yeah,
that hedonistic pleasure will never be enough. But I think what you just said was totally right, is it's not about like just going on the website. It's like the things that cause you to have that temptation in the first place. Like what I realized was that it was like Instagram and TikTok.
yeah.
Like
I was about to say that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like you see something, like you see an attractive girl like dressed very loosely, you're
dancing around.
laying in bed, so it's the things that like lead up to it, and also where you're at, because if you're laying in bed on TikTok at night, that's like the perfect place for
Mm.
you to commit the sin. And so, I have a video on this, and it's so important, and it's important to understand how your brain works, that basically it's like every time you give into addiction, it's like walking on a path where there should be grass, and every time you walk on it, the grass isn't going to grow back, so it's just going to be easier to relapse and fall into that sin. But every time you say like no to the path, every time you just, you're about to go on the website, just jump in a cold shower and like, reverse engineer your brain, then the grass is going to grow back, which means there's like more resistance
Yeah,
on this path, so it won't be as easy to relapse. And I think it's just about avoiding the situations before, like there's probably a certain place that you're giving into this sin. So avoid there's like a combination of things, like TikTok and laying in your bed are obvious ones. But just being able to realize that, and kind of reverse engineer your habits, so it won't be so easy. If you make it harder for your brain to give into the sin, then it won't you won't do it as much. And you may even want to do something like extreme, like if you take your door off your bedroom, then it's like you got to be crazy to do it then, if like you have
yeah,
like family and stuff. but it's like you want to make it difficult for yourself, and you that way you don't fall onto the same path and relapse.
I totally agree.
Hmm.
And it is hard to like with TikTok and Instagram especially, like even when you make the choice like okay, like I'm trying to clean it up, but it takes a long time for your For You page
Yeah,
for that algorithm to stop giving you like that stuff.
yeah,
And like it takes a long time. You have to, I'm telling you, like you have to go and unfollow like all the girls. Like you just have to. Like
yeah,
you have to. And it's hard because you feel like in that moment you feel like you're losing something.
yeah,
Like it's like you kind of have like this mental connection that you have to like let go of. And you kind of
yeah.
like mourn it
Hmm.
for a minute, but you just have to do it. And you have to, what I've learned is like God will help you
Yes, you
a
need
hundred
God's help.
percent, but you have to want it. You
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
want it. Because
yeah,
over that course of that year, it's like sometimes like, yeah, I wasn't doing it. But like all I could think of like, dude, I wish I was doing it.
yeah.
And eventually I came to this point where it was like, dude, like this is terrible. Every time I like relapse on it, like the pain, like the
Yes, it's
anguish I feel is
yeah,
like unbearable because like, I'd keep track of like my streaks.
yeah. Me
And
too.
like my longest was like 20 days.
Yeah,
And then I kind of like it was so weird. Like I didn't even want to do it, but like my brain
yeah,
like turned in on itself and like made me do it.
yeah,
And how bad I felt after that, I like couldn't like I it felt so bad. So now I keep a tally on my wall. I'm at 70 days. In
wow,
3 hours I'll be at 71 days.
wow.
Uh, and that's like another thing like within Christianity. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's outside of Orthodoxy, but it's like this debate of like, well, okay, maybe porn's a sin, but like masturbating's not a sin, and like like the justification of
Yeah,
like especially that argument of like, well, what if I'm like have my eyes closed and I'm not thinking about
yeah,
anything, but I'm masturbating? It's like, dude, like it's still wrong,
yeah.
and
You're
that's
lying to
like,
yourself. You're just
yeah,
trying to justify the sin. Is like that. I did that same thing. I'm like, oh well, it's not like that bad, but it's like intuitively, I knew that this was bad and that I didn't like doing it. And it was really when I started to hate it. It's like this is so shameful. Why am I doing this like alone? I should be like married, not trying to
yeah.
rig my brain to get the reward. But
And
what?
that's
Yeah,
another good point you brought up about marriage because like now I'm at a point where I am looking to wait until marriage to have sex.
yeah,
And with porn, I met a girl, things didn't work out, but she was a good Christian girl.
mhm,
And like I was still looking at it and I felt so bad.
yeah,
Even though like we weren't married, like we weren't like even close to being married, like I felt bad to her
yeah,
about it. And I had seen before this a video on Instagram that a girl made about like things Christian men shouldn't do or like you
mm.
shouldn't date a guy if he's doing this, and porn was one of them. And the comment section was like a war zone. Like, oh, like these guys like freaking out.
Yeah.
And I'm like there's something weird about this, like that we're like, and that like opened my eyes to be like, no, like this isn't hurting me. It is hurting me, but it's also hurting whatever girl I'll end up with. And
Exactly.
like having
Yeah.
like that second layer of like, okay, I'm doing this, or I guess a third layer, I'm doing this for God, I'm
Mhm.
doing this for myself, and
Mhm.
now I'm doing this for the woman that I'm looking to spend my entire life with.
Yeah.
And another like thing that you get thrown at you is, and maybe this works for some guys, but like the girls out there that are making the videos and stuff,
Mm.
like you should like kind of hate them. Like they hate you, they're only after your money, they're after your soul, and so you should like make it like a personal like vendetta against them to not watch stuff. And
Yeah.
I kind of don't love that because I kind of like feel so sorry for these poor girls
Yeah.
who are doing this. Um,
Yeah. It's a really sad industry. They take advantage of young women, young men, and then they purposely target these videos towards kids. Like both of us got addicted when
yeah,
haven't even hit
I was
you know
10.
yeah 10 years old. And luckily a lot of states now are having like ID verification laws where like they're trying to restrict access because if you're below 18 there's no like you should it's so damaging
Yeah.
to your
Because
brain.
that's the other thing. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, click yes, you're 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now
Yeah.
here's things that you could never have even imagined on your own.
Yeah.
Here's like an entire library of the most like
Exactly.
disgusting things that you would have no idea existed because you're 9.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what's so dangerous about it is it gets people into these very weird fetishes. But one other thing I want to say about Instagram and TikTok is I think it's best just to do a total detox of those, like especially during a time like Lent. Just delete the apps for a month, and you're not gonna miss anything,
Yeah.
and you won't like so much temptation is gone just by deleting those. Because like I've seen lots of times where people will totally make a new Instagram and it's already recommending them
Yeah.
like girls in bikini pics. So it's like almost inherent to it. And that's why I personally don't think it's good to be like a consumer on Instagram or TikTok. Like I only am on this to like so people can reach out to me and so I can like post some memes or like share some memes. But like everything else, like just really limiting your usage on these apps because it's kind of when we come to them mindless and we just want some like dopamine and it's like Instagram, TikTok, it gives
Yeah.
that to us, and then it can also give it to us in in the sexual things. So um, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Because getting your For You page back to normal takes a lot of
yeah.
determination.
Yeah, exactly. So it's probably better if you're really addicted just to
Yeah,
do,
just get off it.
yeah,
Get away.
just to get off of it. And then one thing you said earlier about vaping, I want to say is that's really good that you had like supportive friends because that's how people get addicted to things, and that's what I realized was hard to get off of vape. Is like I got rid of mine, but then all my friends were still vaping, and then there's just that it's not like a peer pressure like oh you need to do it, but it just feels a little bit weird. But that's really good that you had friends that were supportive and like no you're trying to get off of this. So that's why your friends matter so much is like
Yeah,
they'll be a good um influence on you in these things for everything.
for sure. And
Yeah.
even like with porn, I know that there's like that app or website. It's called like Covenant Eyes, where it like texts like people that where you've been online to like keep you like
Accountable. Yeah.
accountable. I never did that, but I'm in a group chat with a couple of guys, and so I would tell I'd have to tell them like directly, and
Yeah.
that also made it so much worse. It's
Yeah.
like just so much harder. It's like, dude, like, you're gonna have to text these boys,
Yeah.
and and it's good to like have friends because like have friends that are against this stuff with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm one thing I will say is I'm a curious person, and so oftentimes like on Snapchat, I'll conduct like polls and surveys and
Hmm.
stuff. And what I've gathered is that even like the most liberal people that I've talked to, even they think that porn is like inherently bad.
Yeah.
And so it's just
Yeah.
interesting that as like a society like left, right, atheist, Christian, everyone can agree that porn is bad, and yet it's still such a like dominating force
Exactly.
in society.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why we need to continue to talk about it, and it starts at the the individual level with you, like you getting whoever's watching this, getting off porn. It's really hard, but it's like one of the best things you'll ever do. It's like you
Yeah.
just feel so much more confident and happier and healthier being off of it. You don't feel ashamed, and it feels really bad. Like if you start to hate it whenever you break your streak, that's you have to hate the sin. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like anguish, like pain and anguish, like how I'd feel like I'd start crying and be like, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the worst feelings.
Yeah.
Like terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And like put all that like also it's like a waste of time. Like you could be
Yeah.
spending time doing something productive, going on dates with actual girls that could lead to marriage. It's like this like sexual pleasure actually is supposed to be something good in its right context.
Yeah.
You know. So I think that was really great. My last kind of question for you is you started an Instagram. Are you still doing that? Do you want to kind of share your experience with John Shares the
Yeah,
Bible?
I have an Instagram and a YouTube. They're both called John Shares the Bible. Um, I on Instagram it's more like like reels, like
Yeah.
maybe like a minute and a half, like a little message.
Hmm.
But on YouTube every day. I read 3 chapters out of the Orthodox Study Bible, and we read the footnotes, and we're going to go through the whole Bible. So right now
Yeah.
we started in Genesis, and now
Yeah.
we're in First Samuel. We're at the end of First Samuel right now, and so yeah, it's been I've been met again, like my friends, they aren't even necessarily Christian, but like I've been met with so much support by them and by like the public. Like I came in here like onto Instagram, onto YouTube, like kind of expecting like to be like shunned by everyone I know, but really
Oh,
like thank God like everyone's embraced me, and I'll get the occasional negative comment on Instagram, but there's still like so many positive comments, and like it's not that it's about the comments, but like to see like this is a good thing, like not to let like the bad stuff get to you,
yeah.
and just like keep going
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've learned that through my few YouTube channels, especially, getting a lot of hate comments. No matter what you do, you got to realize that you put yourself out there, people are gonna hate, but you'll also get a lot of support. So just, be the bee. The bee sees the good in everything. Like the bee, it will go to the flower in the garden versus a fly is it's always going to go to the worst thing, the like the poop.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's good. Always be optimistic. But I think that's a great place to end it. I think this was a really great conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, definitely. Well, leave any comments if you have any questions. Thank you so much. God bless.